Welcome back to Media 7. We're discussing the media and drugs with Ross Bell, Greg O'Connor and Nandor Tanchos. Nandor, before we went to the break, we were talking about what might have constituted a more useful index, the Drug Policy Modelling Program Index, which actually lets you test different policy settings. It lets you work out what the harm would be if you shifted some of the police budget to treatment or vice versa.
Yep.
I wonder if all of you think that's the kind of general conversation we should be having in the media and elsewhere.
That should be the conversation, and if you look at the tender document for this police harm index, that was meant to be the intention, and what we have isn't quite that. We should be asking the questions in this country: should we be putting this dollar, giving this dollar to the police, or should we be putting it into treatment, for example? We know that controlling the supply of drugs is a very difficult thing to do, as long as there is demand for those drugs. So we need to be looking at how we reduce the demand for those. One of the best ways to do that is to treat people who have drug and alcohol dependency. And we know that for every dollar spent on that, you save $7. So let's have this grown-up conversation about shifting money into treatment, because we know that treatment works.
And of course, the other thing that's not in this particular harm index, and it was the one that the Interagency Committee queried, was that the legal drugs aren't in there. Alcohol and tobacco aren't in there. I mean, Greg, surely the biggest problem for police, the biggest problem drug remains alcohol, doesn't it? Would you have liked to have seen that in here?
Oh, yes, and it should be done too. I mean, and hopefully, again, with that longitudinal study, that will be done. Just going back to your original point, though, about health and it being a health issue, a good comparison is with road policing. Road policing is financed by ACC and the LTSA. They actually pay police to keep the roads safe. And police are contracted to do that. I predict what will happen in the future is health will do the same thing, because it is actually a health issue. And I've been predicting for some time that the Ministry of Health will actually be apportioning its budget to police to say, hey, we're getting huge bills out of this abuse of this drug. Can we please have some better policing of it?
Nandor, that sounds a lot like the Green Party drug policy.
It sounds like a disaster. I've got to say. I mean...
Well, can I say it's worked on the roads. Road toll has gone from 800 to 300 by that. 400 by that way. And what it's done is focused police in that area.
I mean more treating it as a health issue.
Well, yes, we should be treating it as a health issue, but the difference is what decades of prohibitionist policy have shown us in this country overseas, and what alcohol prohibition also showed us, is that you can't police drug use out of existence. It just doesn't work. We need to fundamentally rethink how we're approaching this policy.
So what can you do about methamphetamine then? If you're not liking all the scare stories and people like Mike Sabin, it's not like heroin. You can't prescribe it to people and send them off to go about their lives. They'll just become psychotic eventually.
I think that methamphetamine does have real problems with it, and I've known people who've run into real problems after using a range of different drugs relatively benignly over time. To me, what we really need to do, and what the United Nations is starting to do now with the international conventions, is go back to first principles. Say, what are we trying to achieve with this policy, and rebuild the framework. While we've got a prohibitionist policy, of course we're going to have problems with methamphetamine. Cannabis users were predicting that a decade ago, because we've created this illegal network, incredibly lucrative. Some drug like methamphetamine comes in, of course, boom, it goes all the way through. In Holland, one of the things they do is they differentiate the cannabis market from hard drugs. They have very low rates of hard drug use in Holland. They've the addict population is getting
even
older.
the uptake of cannabis has actually been falling away amongst young people in the Netherlands.
Exactly. So like clip-ons to prohibition.
I spent some time with the Rotterdam Police 2 years ago. In fact, I've been twice with the Rotterdam Police. First time I was there was in this part of the millennium, and they were ignoring their heroin problem then. They were trying to deal with their crime problems, and you're quoting a very liberal approach towards heroin as well as cannabis. I went back there last year.
I checked the drug organisation site and I actually bore out what Nandor said.
I actually went back there, and I know that the Rotterdam Police now have realised that they're going to clean up Rotterdam, and that was the mecca for heroin users. They've got to clean up the drugs, and that's what they're doing. And they've actually, in the time while I was there, they've actually changed their whole policy.
Can I ask you about something else?
That's in Rotterdam. I don't know about the rest of
It just shows you can't go to the police for drug use statistics.
Well, actually,
they're not
and
the
this
right
is just
source.
what I was going to ask you about.
Which is why you go and look. And see for yourself what's happening.
How do you feel about people like Mike Sabin getting the headlines that they are? I mean, to be fair, we contacted him. He thinks he's been taken out of context somewhat. He has been all over the media in the last month saying methamphetamine is spiralling out of control. If you talk to Ross, he'll say our surveys say it's on the wane. Is there not a problem that maybe police aren't the best witnesses in a rational consideration of this issue?
Well, isn't this what surveys like Drug Harm Index, again, whether it's the right one, but you do need some sort of survey. And one of the things is price, purity and availability. That's the only thing that really matters. And that's all I do. I ring my contacts around within police and say, what is the price, what is the availability and what is the purity?
And price hasn't been shifting, despite the millions of dollars that we spend on supply control. So we need to be having a conversation in this country about whether investing that much money into supply control, which drug users report that they have no problem getting their hands on drugs. The price of pot hasn't changed for a long time, despite all of this stuff.
Can I just challenge a myth here about policing not being able to affect availability? When I was a young police officer, we had a huge heroin problem. Everyone I arrested, whether it be for shoplifting or burglary, had a heroin problem. When did that stop? Stopped in 1980. And why did it stop? The Mr. Asia syndicate collapsed. And during the 1980s in New Zealand, we had no heroin problem. And that was policed out of existence.
That's one example. You also have
I'm not disagreeing necessarily, but it can't. Don't say it can't happen, because it did happen.
Bring it back to the media. Sure. I wonder that someone like Ross can't get quoted in the paper, whereas virtually every story I read that cited police sources about methamphetamine was wrong. Right from 2001 in the Herald, methamphetamine is more popular than cannabis and the drug of choice in New Zealand, say police. And time after time, your guys are doing this. They're hyping up this problem. That was never true. It's not true now.
Who was quoted in that story?
Police sources, as usual.
It's not just police sources. Mr. O'Connor has been on record making these claims as well. And he's done a very good job at getting additional resources for the police. Which is what his job is. And what that does, it drowns out other people. The media don't go to other people for us to have this broader conversation. And this is what needs to happen. And Mr. Sabin, who's probably making more money out of methamphetamine than pea cooks are at the moment, are now the people, is now the dialer quote that the media are going to. That's not the conversation we need to be having in this country. Right. So we would like for the media to be able to allow these kind of debates.
We'll wrap up how we get to the conversation after the break.